What if I told you that a sitting elected official, someone actively asking voters to send her to the United States Congress, has been caught on camera doing something so politically explosive that the entire National Democrat establishment is scrambling to bury it before anyone sees it? What if I told you the videos are real, verified, and have already been seen by millions? What if I told you that the moment you watch this footage, you will understand exactly what the Democrat Party is becoming and why its own insiders are panicking? And what if the most devastating detail of this entire story has nothing to do with the videos themselves, but with who this woman actually is and what her family had to survive to even be here? If you believe that elected officials should honor the country they serve, smash that like button right now, because what you are about to see is something the political establishment prays stays buried. Stay with us until the very end, because by the time this is over, you will not just be outraged. You will understand the ideology behind this moment and why it is spreading faster than anyone wants to admit. Here is where it starts. A city council meeting in Sacramento, California. Elected officials standing together, hands over hearts, reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And right there, in plain sight, caught on camera multiple times across multiple meetings, one council member does something that stops people cold. She turns her back on the flag. Not a quiet abstention, not a moment of private hesitation. A full, deliberate, physical turning away from the American flag while her colleagues stand and honor it. Eyes downcast. Body language defiant. Not once, not twice. Multiple times. At city council meetings. At district meetings. On the public record for anyone to see. Her name is Mai Vong. She has held her Sacramento City Council seat since 2020. And right now, she is running for California's 7th Congressional District, actively seeking a seat in the United States House of Representatives, trying to unseat a Democrat incumbent who has held that seat for over 20 years. And the race is not a long shot. It is neck and neck, with the primary set for June 2nd. This is not a fringe candidate hiding in the shadows. This is a serious political contender, one election away from representing Americans in Washington, D.C. Over Memorial Day weekend of all weekends, those videos resurfaced, they exploded across social media. Millions of people watched them, and the political world caught fire. Even Democrat insiders could not contain their alarm. A Sacramento political consultant, a Democrat, told the New York Post that her actions were, and I quote the characterization, vile, radically extreme, and completely disrespectful to veterans and their families. But that is not even the most shocking part, because what Mai Vong did next made everything exponentially worse. Most politicians, when caught doing something this politically damaging, go quiet. They issue a careful statement. They apologize. They let their team do damage control. Mai Vong did the exact opposite. She went on Facebook and she celebrated it. In a post published in February of 2025, she laid out her reasoning in her own words. She wrote that turning her back on the flag was intentional, deliberate, a choice she made at every single council meeting. She claimed that she uses that moment, the moment when every other official around her is honoring the nation, to, in her words, ground herself, center her communities, and remind herself of the injustices and harms that continue to affect so many both locally and across the globe under this nation's influence. Under this nation's influence, not under this nation's protection. Not under this nation's leadership, under its influence, as though America itself is the source of the world's suffering. And then she kept going. She wrote that they want us to become numb, that it is part of a plan to keep people complacent, that the answer is to resist. She closed the post with 2 words, Free Palestine. Let that sink in for a moment. This is not a private opinion. This is a public declaration from a woman running for the United States Congress. She is not hiding her worldview. She is broadcasting it. And the National Democrat establishment knows exactly what this means for them heading into a critical election. But here is the detail about this woman that makes absolutely none of this make sense, until suddenly it makes all the sense in the world. Here is where the story takes a dramatic turn. To understand who Mai Vong really is, you need to know where she comes from. Not politically, not ideologically, but literally where her family comes from and what they had to survive to reach American soil. Mai Vong is the daughter of Hmong refugees. If you know your history, you already feel where this is going. The Hmong are a people from the mountains of Laos. During the Vietnam War era, the CIA recruited Hmong communities to fight alongside American forces in one of the most dangerous and strategically critical operations of that entire conflict. These were not paid mercenaries. These were families, fathers, sons, entire villages who put their lives on the line because they believed in the fight against communist expansion. And when the United States withdrew from Southeast Asia, those families paid an unimaginable price. The communist government that took over marked the Hmong as traitors. Thousands were slaughtered. Entire communities were hunted. Families fled into jungles, crossed rivers, and scattered across borders, desperately searching for survival. The persecution was systematic and it was brutal. The only reason many of those families made it out alive, the only reason they were given refuge, given a future, given a chance, was because of the United States of America. That is not a political opinion. That is history. My Vong's family survived because of the very country whose flag she turns her back on. Her family's escape from a communist government that wanted them dead was made possible in large part by the nation she publicly refuses to honor. That is the detail that lands like a hammer, and it raises a question that demands an answer. How does someone reach this point? How does a person whose family was saved by America come to publicly declare that America is the oppressor? There is an answer, and once you hear it, you will start seeing it absolutely everywhere. The answer has a name. It is called third worldism. And before you dismiss that as some obscure academic term, understand this: it is the single most important ideological framework you have never heard of. It is the engine running underneath the surface of modern Democrat politics. It is the reason figures like Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and now candidates like Mai Vong and Zohran Mamdani in New York City all seem to operate from the exact same moral playbook, no matter how different their backgrounds appear to be. Third worldism is not communism in the classic sense. It is not Islamism. It is something more dangerous in many ways, because it wears the language of justice, equity, and human rights, while advancing a framework that is fundamentally hostile to the civilization that built those very concepts. Here is how it works. Every cultural Marxist ideology, and third worldism is absolutely one of them, begins with a binary, a fixed, non-negotiable division of the entire world into two groups: an oppressor and an oppressed, a persecutor and a victim. One side is irredeemably evil. The other side is noble, suffering, and righteous. That binary is the foundation. Everything else is built on top of it. Now here is where third worldism becomes uniquely powerful and uniquely destructive. Because in this particular framework, the permanent, irredeemable oppressor, the source of all the world's injustice, is Western civilization itself. Not a specific policy, not a specific government. Western civilization as a whole. Its history, its institutions, its symbols, its military, its influence across the globe, all of it categorized as fundamentally wicked, white supremacist, patriarchal, colonial, and beyond redemption. And on the other side of that binary sits what they call the Third World. The Global South, the oppressed peoples of post-colonial nations, and crucially, in this framework, those people are not merely victims. They are heroes. They are the noble resistance, the brave freedom fighters rising up against the empire. And since justice always sides with the oppressed, any true progressive must side with them too. This is not a fringe theory anymore. This is the operating system of an entire wing of the Democrat Party. And now read Mai Vong's Facebook post again through that lens. She said she uses the Pledge of Allegiance to remind herself of the injustices caused by this nation's influence. That is not personal grief. That is third worldist doctrine, word for word, applied to a 30-second civic ritual at a city council meeting in Sacramento. This is why she can stand at a public ceremony, surrounded by colleagues honoring the flag, and turn her back without flinching. Without shame, without conflict. Because within this ideological framework, the American flag does not represent sacrifice or freedom. It represents empire. It represents the oppressor. And to honor it, even for 30 seconds, is to participate in legitimizing a system she has been trained, ideologically trained, to view as the source of global suffering. But that is not even the most chilling part. Because when she added Free Palestine to that post, she was not making a foreign policy comment about a disputed territory. She was signaling something far more calculated. And what it reveals about where this ideology is heading will stop you cold. Stay with this, because this is where everything connects. When Mai Vong closed that Facebook post with Free Palestine, she was not expressing sympathy for civilians caught in a conflict. She was placing the Israeli-Palestinian situation inside the exact same third worldist binary framework. Israel becomes a settler colonial extension of Western power. America's support for Israel becomes proof of empire. And once that categorization is made, everything that follows is already predetermined. The violence is no longer violence. It becomes resistance. The October 7th massacre, the single deadliest attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust, becomes, through this ideological lens, an act of righteous uprising against a colonial oppressor. Not a tragedy, not an atrocity, a justified strike by the oppressed against the empire. The Pledge of Allegiance and October 7th occupy the exact same moral universe inside this framework. One is a symbol of the oppressor, the other is an act of resistance against it. And the role of the progressive, the ideologically committed third worldist, is to stand with the resistance and against the empire. Every single time, without exception. The facts of any specific situation do not matter. The history does not matter. The casualties do not matter. Only the narrative matters. Only the binary matters. And here is what should alarm every single person watching this. This ideology is not staying on college campuses. It is not staying in faculty lounges or activist circles. It is winning elections. Zohran Mamdani just surged to the front of the New York City mayoral race, running on this exact ideological framework. And here is a detail that cuts straight to the heart of what is happening. The majority of Mamdani's voters were not born in the United States. This is not a coincidence. This is a coalition being deliberately constructed. An electoral base being built from communities that have been ideologically primed to view America through the third worldist lens as an empire to be resisted from within rather than a nation to be embraced and built upon. Think about what that means for the future of American elections. Think about what it means when candidates running on this framework are not losing, they are surging. Things were about to get worse. Because this march through American institutions did not happen overnight, it has been decades in the making, and it has reached a level of political maturity that can no longer be dismissed as fringe. But here is what they did not count on. This ideology has a fatal flaw, and it is already beginning to crack under its own weight. Here is the thing about third worldism that its adherents cannot escape. It is intellectually self-defeating, and the proof is hiding in plain sight. If America is the irredeemable oppressor, the source of global suffering, the empire that must be resisted, then someone needs to explain why millions of people risk their lives every single year trying to get inside it. People cross deserts. They cross oceans. They survive brutal journeys through jungles and border crossings and detention just for the chance to live inside the empire that this ideology condemns.
Someone needs to explain why Hmong refugees, people who suffered genuine communist persecution, genuine genocide-level violence, fled directly into American arms. Not away from America, into it. Because America was the sanctuary. America was the hope. America was the country willing to absorb the very people that a communist government wanted dead. Mai Vong's own family is living proof that the third worldist framework is a lie. And here is another contradiction they cannot answer. When illegal immigrants in the United States are facing deportation, they protest in the streets. That is their right. But look at what flags they wave when they do it. Not the American flag, the flags of the very countries they fled. The countries they risked everything to escape. If those countries are so superior, if America is so oppressive, why did they leave? Why do they stay? The contradictions are not subtle, they are glaring. They are offensive to basic human logic and ordinary moral intuition. And that is exactly why this ideology, like every totalizing system built on a false binary before it, will ultimately collapse under the weight of its own incoherence. It will join the Soviet Union on the ash heap of history. But it will not collapse on its own. It collapses when people name it, when voters understand exactly what they are actually voting for. When citizens refuse to stay complacent, while this framework quietly advances through every institution it can reach. California deserves better. America deserves better. And the reckoning is already beginning. The world is changing faster than anyone predicted, and the forces behind what you just watched are operating on every front simultaneously. Click on the next video and join us as we cover the explosive new developments that show just how far this ideology has already reached, and what is being done to stop it.